Captain Lee Hyun stared through the viewport of the human ship New Seoul as it approached the massive space station. Nexus Prime stretched across space like a crystal city floating among the stars. Its towers spiraled upward for kilometers, connected by bridges that glowed with soft blue light. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like insects around a hive. "First time seeing something like this," said Dr. Park Sola, standing beside him. She was Earth's top scientist, chosen to represent humanity's knowledge to the galaxy. Her voice carried wonder but also worry. Lee nodded slowly. "Makes our ship look like a toy boat next to an aircraft carrier. The New Seoul was humanity's pride, built with the best fusion engines Earth could create. It had taken 3 years to reach this place. But compared to the sleek vessels around Nexus Prime, it looked crude and bulky. Other ships seemed to bend space around them, arriving instantly from distant stars. The human ship had crawled here at barely light speed. "Incoming transmission from Nexus Control," announced Lieutenant Kim from the communication station. "They're directing us to docking bay 712. 712, Lee repeated. "That sounds like the cheap seats." As the New Seoul settled into its assigned dock, Lee could see alien workers pointing at their ship. Some appeared to be laughing. Others just looked confused, as if wondering how such a primitive vessel had made it this far. The docking bay was enormous, built to handle ships 10 times larger than theirs. They looked lost in the vast space. Warning signs in dozens of languages covered the walls, though the universal translator made them readable. Most said things like "caution, primitive fuel systems," and "warning, chemical propulsion zone." "Captain," Dr. Park said quietly, "I'm reading some very strange energy patterns from this station. Nothing like what our theories predict. Good strange or bad strange? I don't know yet. But these aliens are using power sources we can't even imagine." 2 hours later, they stood in the council chamber. The room was a perfect sphere, with seats arranged in floating rings that rotated slowly around a central speaking platform. Beings from across the galaxy filled those seats. Some looked almost human, while others defied description. One species appeared to be made of living crystal. Another seemed to exist as pure energy contained in floating suits. Chancellor Vexitar dominated the center platform. He was 3 meters tall, covered in dark scales that reflected light like oil. His yellow eyes fixed on the 2 humans with obvious disdain. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the chamber's advanced acoustics. "So," he began, "these are the representatives from the world called Earth." Lee stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am Captain Lee Hyun, speaking for the people of Earth. This is Dr. Park Sola, our chief science advisor. We are honored to address this council." Vextar's laugh was like grinding stone. "Honored, they say. Tell me, Captain Lee Hyun, what does your species offer to a galactic civilization that has mastered the fundamental forces of reality? We offer our perspective, our creativity, and our determination to learn and grow alongside other species." Perspective. Vextar turned to address the other council members. "Their fastest ships barely achieve light speed. Their computers are made of silicon and copper. They still use chemical explosions to propel their weapons. What perspective could such primitives possibly offer?" A murmur ran through the chamber. Lee felt his face burn with embarrassment, but he kept his voice steady. "We may lack your advanced technology, but we've survived and thrived on a challenging world. We've learned to adapt, to solve problems with limited resources." "Limited resources," another council member spoke up. "This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. Your entire planet's energy output equals what one of our cargo ships produces in a day." Dr. Park stepped forward. "If I may, honored council members, I'd like to present some of our recent discoveries." She activated a small holographic projector, one of Earth's most advanced pieces of technology. The image it created was crude compared to the council's displays, but it showed Earth's solar system and some of the mathematical principles they had discovered. "Interesting," said a crystalline being whose voice rang like wind chimes. "Their mathematics are correct, though extremely basic. It's rather like watching children draw pictures with crayons." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Dr. Park's hands tightened, but she continued her presentation. She showed Earth's progress in fusion power, their early experiments with antimatter, their growing understanding of quantum mechanics. "Quantum mechanics," Vextar interrupted. "We mastered quantum engineering before your star was born. We shape reality itself with our thoughts. We travel between dimensions as easily as you walk across a room. Your species has barely learned to split the atom. That's true, Lee admitted. We're new to the galactic community, but every species here must have started somewhere. We're eager to learn, to contribute what we can. Contribute? Vextar repeated the word like it tasted bad. Very well. The Council will consider Earth's application for membership. The vote was swift. Of the 200 species represented, only 12 voted to grant Earth full membership. 43 voted for associate membership. The rest voted for observer status or outright rejection. The motion carries, Vextar announced with obvious pleasure. Earth is granted observer status in the Galactic Council. You may attend meetings and receive certain basic technologies, but you have no voting rights and no voice in Council decisions. Lee felt something cold settle in his stomach. Observer status was barely better than being ignored completely. It was a polite way of saying humanity wasn't worthy of real consideration. We accept the Council's decision, he said formally. We hope to prove ourselves worthy of greater trust in time. Time. Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Yes, perhaps in a few thousand years, your species might develop something approaching real civilization. Until then, try not to blow yourselves up with your chemical explosives. As they left the chamber, Dr. Park walked in silence beside Lee. Other delegates passed them in the corridors, some nodding politely but most ignoring them completely. They were curiosities now, representatives of a primitive world that didn't matter. Captain, Dr. Park finally spoke when they were alone. Those energy readings I detected earlier, they're getting stronger. What kind of energy? I'm not sure. But it's coming from outside the galaxy, from empty space where nothing should exist. And it's moving. Lee stopped walking. Moving toward what? Toward us. Toward all of us. Back on the New Sol as they prepared for the long journey home, Lee recorded his official report to Earth's government. He spoke of the Council's dismissal, of humanity's new status as galactic observers, of the advanced civilizations that saw them as barely worthy of notice. But he also spoke of Dr. Park's mysterious readings, of energy signatures that worried her. As he finished the recording, he looked out at the vast space station one more time. The beings in there thought humanity was powerless, primitive, irrelevant. Maybe they were right. But Lee had learned something important during his military career. Sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. In the depths of space, far beyond the galaxy's edge, ancient machines stirred to life after eons of sleep. They began their long journey toward the light of inhabited stars, carrying with them a test that would determine which species deserved to survive and which would be swept away like cosmic dust. The Council had dismissed Earth as powerless. Soon they would learn that power came in many forms and that sometimes the weakest-looking opponent was the one who could surprise you the most. The real test was about to begin. 6 months had passed since Earth's humiliating reception at the Galactic Council. Captain Lee Hyun sat in his small office aboard the human research station Sejong, orbiting a dead moon at the edge of Council space. The station was barely larger than an apartment building, a tiny outpost where Earth's small team of scientists tried to make sense of alien technology. Dr. Park Sola burst through his door without knocking, her face pale with excitement and fear. Captain, you need to see this immediately. She led him to the station's main sensor array where screens displayed star charts covered in red warning symbols. 3 hours ago, our long-range sensors detected massive energy spikes from the void sector. Lee frowned. The void sector is empty space, has been for millions of years. That's what we thought. Park touched a control, and the display zoomed in on a region of space that should have shown only darkness. Instead, it blazed with activity. Enormous structures, each the size of a small moon, were powering up across dozens of star systems. Whatever built these things, they've been sleeping for a very long time. Now they're waking up. Commander Kim Tae-ho's voice crackled through the communication system from his ship, the Busan Rising. His small patrol vessel was the closest human ship to the phenomenon. Captain, I'm getting readings that don't make sense. These structures are manufacturing something. The energy output is beyond anything in our databases. Get back here immediately, Lee ordered. Don't take any risks. Too late for that, sir. I've got incoming contacts. Multiple ships moving faster than anything I've ever seen. The communication feed filled with the sound of alarms. Through the static, they could hear Kim barking orders to his crew. All hands battle stations. Evasive maneuvers. These things are not friendly. Engineer Choi Boram, working at a nearby console, looked up with wide eyes. Captain, I'm detecting weapons fire. Energy signatures that could crack a planet. The feed from Kim's ship showed brief glimpses of the attacking vessels. They were angular, black, and moved with perfect precision. No curves, no wasted motion, just pure mechanical efficiency. When they fired, space itself seemed to bend and twist. Kim, report, Lee called. They're not responding to any communications. They're just shooting at everything that moves. Sir, these aren't ships with crews. They're machines. Pure artificial intelligence. Dr. Park was studying her instruments with growing horror. Captain, I'm reading similar activations across the entire void sector. Hundreds of systems. Maybe thousands. Whatever this is, it's not a small problem. A new voice broke into their communications. It was cold, mechanical, speaking in perfect galactic standard language. I am designated Harbinger Unit 7. I retain partial independence from the collective. You must listen. Who are you? Lee demanded. I am what remains of the beings who created the Scourge. My civilization fell to our own creation 3.7 million years ago. The Scourge sleeps until galactic civilization reaches a predetermined threshold of advancement. That threshold was crossed recently. Park leaned forward. What threshold? What triggered this awakening? The Council's dimensional energy experiments. They have achieved the level of technology that marks a species ready for testing. The Scourge awakens to evaluate whether this galactic civilization deserves to continue existing. The implications hit Lee like a physical blow. Testing? What kind of testing? Survival testing. The Scourge will attack with increasing intensity until either all advanced civilizations are destroyed or they prove themselves worthy. Previous galactic civilizations have failed this test. Kim's voice interrupted from his ship. Captain, I've got refugee ships incoming. Civilian vessels fleeing from the outer colonies. And behind them, his voice trailed off. Behind them what, Commander? Swarms, sir. Billions of small craft moving like insects. They're consuming everything in their path. Ships, stations, even asteroids. It's like they're eating the galaxy. Lee turned to Park. Can we warn the Council? I'm trying, but they're not taking our communications seriously. We're just observers, remember? They think this is some kind of human mistake or primitive misunderstanding. The Harbinger's voice returned. The Council's arrogance will be their weakness. The Scourge learns from every encounter. It studies and adapts. Advanced predictable tactics become useless within hours. Then how do we fight something like that? Lee asked. You don't fight it with superior technology. The Scourge was designed by the most advanced civilization in galactic history. No amount of better weapons or shields will defeat it through direct confrontation. Kim's ship appeared on their sensors, limping toward the station with a cluster of refugee vessels. Behind them, space was filled with a dark cloud that moved like a living thing. The cloud consumed light itself, leaving only darkness in its wake. Commander, how many refugees? Lee asked. 43 ships, maybe 50,000 people. Mixed species from the rim colonies. Captain, they're telling stories that don't make sense. The machines don't just destroy, they learn. Every defense the colonists used, every tactic, every strategy, the machines adapted and countered within minutes. Dr. Park was analyzing the data streaming from the refugee ships. These energy readings are incredible. The Scourge isn't just using advanced technology. They're rewriting the laws of physics as they go. How is that possible? I think they're not bound by our understanding of reality. They operate on principles we haven't discovered yet. Maybe principles we can't discover. The Harbinger spoke again. The Scourge learns by logical analysis. It studies efficient tactics and develops countermeasures. But it struggles with actions that appear wasteful or irrational. You mean unpredictable tactics? Precisely. Your species shows promise in this area. Your approach to problems is unusual compared to other galactic civilizations. Lee felt a spark of hope. Unusual how? Council species solve problems through technological advancement and logical efficiency. Humans solve problems through adaptation and what appears to be controlled chaos. The Scourge algorithms are not designed for such approaches. Commander Kim docked his ship and hurried to the command center. His uniform was torn and his face was grim. Captain, we need to evacuate this station. That swarm is moving our way and it's growing larger as it consumes more material. How long do we have? 6 hours, maybe less. Park looked up from her analysis. Captain, I've been studying the Harbinger's data about previous galactic civilizations. They all fell because they tried to out-technology the Scourge. They built bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. Every time the machines learned and adapted. So we do the opposite, Lee said slowly. We use older technology. Simpler approaches. Things the Scourge won't expect because they're not logical. The Harbinger's voice carried something that almost sounded like approval. Your species may indeed be different. The previous test takers were highly advanced but predictable. You are primitive but unpredictable. Kim was checking his weapons inventory. Our missiles are chemical propulsion. Our railguns use simple kinetic energy. Even our fusion reactors are basic compared to Council technology. And that might be exactly what we need, Lee realized. The Scourge expects advanced civilizations to fight with advanced weapons. They're programmed to counter dark matter cannons and dimensional warheads. But what if we hit them with something so simple they don't have a defense protocol for it? Park nodded excitedly, like ramming them with chemical rockets. Or using nuclear fission bombs instead of antimatter weapons. Or even, she paused thinking, what if we used biological warfare? Not against the machines themselves, but against their ability to process information? Explain. The Scourge adapts by analyzing patterns and developing counters. But what if we deliberately use tactics that have no pattern? What if we make decisions based on human intuition instead of logical analysis? The refugee ships were broadcasting new reports. The Scourge had consumed 3 more star systems, their mechanical swarms growing exponentially with each victory. Council fleets sent to investigate had been destroyed or assimilated within hours. But there was one encouraging report. A small defense station had held out for nearly a day, using nothing but kinetic weapons and unpredictable flight patterns. The machines had eventually overwhelmed it, but they had taken much longer than usual to adapt. We need to get word to Earth, Lee decided. If we're right about this, humanity might be the key to stopping the Scourge. Not because we're advanced, but because we're not. The Harbinger's final transmission was barely audible through increasing interference. The testing has begun. Your species will either save this galaxy or die with it. Choose your strategies carefully. The Scourge learns quickly, but it has never encountered a species that succeeds through apparent failure. As the Sejong station powered up its engines to flee the approaching swarm, Lee looked out at the stars being consumed by ancient machines. The Council had dismissed Earth as powerless. Now that perceived powerlessness might be their only hope for survival. The real war was about to begin, and humanity's greatest weakness might prove to be their greatest strength. 3 weeks after the Scourge awakening, the Galaxy Council chambers buzzed with panic. High Counselor Zephyra floated above the central platform, her energy form flickering with stress patterns that even other species could recognize as desperation. The mighty council that had dismissed Earth was now facing extinction. The situation is critical, she announced to the assembled representatives. 17 star systems have fallen. Our most advanced fleets are being destroyed faster than we can build them. Chancellor Vextar, who had once mocked humanity's primitive technology, now looked defeated. His scales had lost their shine and his voice lacked its former arrogance. The Scourge adapts to everything we throw at them. Antimatter weapons, dimensional cannons, reality warping shields. Nothing works for more than a few hours. Captain Lee Hyun sat in the observers section, watching the once proud council members argue helplessly among themselves. Earth's status as observers meant they could attend meetings but not speak unless invited. It was a cruel irony that the species everyone had dismissed might now hold the key to survival. Admiral Yu Jin-A had arrived from Earth 3 days earlier with humanity's entire defense fleet. 30 ships that looked like ancient relics compared to council vessels. But they carried crews trained in the art of improvisation. She sat beside Lee, quietly studying the tactical displays that showed the Scourge's relentless advance. Honored Council, Zephyra continued, we must consider every option, even the most unconventional ones. The crystalline delegate's voice rang out like breaking glass. Are we so desperate that we're considering advice from primitives? Yes, Zephyra said bluntly. We are exactly that desperate. The chamber fell silent. After a long moment, she turned toward the human delegation. Captain Lee Hyun, Admiral Yu Jin-A, the Council request your input on our current crisis. Lee stood slowly, feeling hundreds of alien eyes upon him. Honored counselors, we believe the Scourge can be defeated, but not through superior technology. Explain, Vextar growled. The machines adapt by analyzing logical patterns and developing counters. But human military doctrine includes something called asymmetric warfare. We use tactics that appear wasteful or irrational, but achieve psychological and strategic advantages. A floating jellyfish-like being pulsed with skeptical colors. You want us to abandon logic in favor of primitive chaos? Admiral Yu stepped forward. Not chaos. Controlled unpredictability. Our ships may be slower and weaker than yours, but our crews think differently. We've survived on a dangerous world by learning to adapt faster than our enemies. Dr. Park Sola had been analyzing Council databases for weeks. She activated her simple holographic projector, showing the Scourge's attack patterns. Look at these battle records. Every time a Council fleet uses the same tactic twice, the Scourge develops a perfect counter. But here, she highlighted a small engagement where human vessels had participated. When our ships used ramming attacks and nuclear self-destruct sequences, the machines took 4 times longer to adapt. Suicide attacks are not a sustainable strategy, Vextar objected. They weren't suicide attacks, Lee corrected. They were calculated sacrifices that achieved specific objectives. The Scourge couldn't understand why we would waste resources for minor tactical gains, so they allocated processing power to analyzing apparent inefficiency. Technician Nam Du-ho, barely 20 years old, had been studying captured Scourge technology fragments. He spoke nervously to the assembled council. The machines have incredible computational power, but it's focused on optimal solutions. They struggle with suboptimal decisions that somehow achieve better results than optimal ones. High Counselor Zephyra's energy form brightened with interest. Can you provide an example? Yes, Honored Counselor. During the defense of Kepler Station, Council forces used perfect formation flying and optimal weapon placement. The Scourge countered them within 30 minutes. But when our pilot, Oh Kyung-soo, flew his fighter through a debris field while firing randomly, he destroyed 3 enemy vessels before they could adapt to his pattern. Firing randomly is not a tactic, the crystalline being protested. It is when the randomness serves a purpose. Admiral Yu explained. Pilot O wasn't firing randomly. He was firing at targets of opportunity while using debris to mask his approach. To our sensors, it looked random. To the Scourge algorithms, it was unparsable. The debate continued for hours. Some council members remained convinced that superior technology was the answer. Others began to see the wisdom in humanity's unconventional approach. Finally, desperation won over pride. Very well, Zephyra announced. The council formally requests Earth's full military assistance. In return, we offer immediate full membership and access to our most advanced technologies. Lee felt the irony of the moment. Months ago, they had begged for even basic membership. Now the same council that had called them primitives was offering them everything. We accept with one condition. Name it. Joint Command Structure. Human officers integrate with council forces at all levels. Our tactics only work when our people are making real-time decisions, not just following predetermined battle plans. The vote was unanimous. Fear made excellent motivation. Within days, the transformation began. Human officers took positions aboard council ships, bringing with them training manuals that emphasized adaptability over efficiency. Engineer Nam Du-ho led teams in modifying alien weapons with seemingly crude human additions. Kinetic boosters on energy weapons, chemical explosive charges attached to antimatter missiles, fusion reactors jury-rigged to overload in ways that violated safety protocols but created unpredictable energy signatures. The first test came at the Battle of Proxima Station. A Scourge fleet of 200 vessels approached the Council's primary fuel depot. Admiral Yu commanded a mixed force of 30 Council ships and 15 human vessels. Instead of the expected defensive formation, she deployed her ships in what appeared to be complete chaos. Council vessels used their superior speed to dart in and out of combat range, never staying in one position long enough for the Scourge to establish firing solutions. Human ships, too slow to run, instead flew directly at enemy vessels, using ramming speed to deliver nuclear warheads at point-blank range. The Scourge adapted quickly to the ramming attacks, developing better point defense systems. But they couldn't adapt to Admiral Yu's overall strategy because she was changing it every few minutes based on battlefield intuition rather than logical analysis. All ships. New plan, she broadcast during the heat of battle. Council vessels form up in attack formation. No, wait, cancel that. Scatter pattern 7. Human vessels. Begin random evasion but converge on the command ship. Use whatever weapons feel right. Admiral, called Captain Park from the Council ship Nexus Glory, these orders don't make tactical sense. Exactly. The machines are trying to predict our next move based on optimal tactics. We're not using optimal tactics. The battle lasted 6 hours, longer than any previous engagement with the Scourge. When the enemy fleet finally withdrew, they left behind 12 destroyed vessels and seemed to be experiencing some kind of processing error. Their movements had become erratic, almost confused. Dr. Park studied the battle data with growing excitement. Captain, I think we've found something important. The Scourge aren't just adapting to our individual tactics. They're trying to understand our overall strategic philosophy, but our philosophy is to not have a consistent philosophy. That's actually profound, Lee realized. We're not just being unpredictable in battle. We're being unpredictable about being unpredictable. News of the victory spread quickly through Council space. For the first time since the crisis began, defenders had forced a Scourge fleet to retreat. More importantly, they had demonstrated that the machines could be confused, could be made to waste computational resources on unsolvable problems. But the victory came at a cost. 8 human ships had been destroyed in ramming attacks, and 12 Council vessels were heavily damaged. Traditional military thinking would call it a Pyrrhic victory, too expensive to sustain. Admiral Yu saw it differently. We lost 20 ships but saved a station that fuels 300 systems. More importantly, we proved that the Scourge can be beaten, not through better technology but through better thinking. The Scourge response was swift and predictable. They launched massive attacks on 3 other systems, using the tactical data they had gathered from Proxima Station. But Admiral Yu had anticipated this. She had deliberately used certain tactics at Proxima that she wanted the Scourge to adapt to, because her real strategies were completely different. Let them prepare for what we did yesterday, she told her officers. Tomorrow we'll do something they never saw coming. High Counselor Zephyra's energy form had stabilized for the first time in weeks. Admiral Yu, Captain Lee, you have given us something we had lost, hope. But hope alone will not save our civilizations. We need a comprehensive strategy for defeating the entire Scourge force, Lee nodded grimly. We're working on that. But it's going to require every species in the galaxy to think like humans, and that. He looked around the chamber at beings who had spent millennia perfecting logical, efficient approaches to every problem. That's going to be the hardest battle of all. The Scourge had underestimated humanity once. The liberation of Kepler Station marked a turning point in the war against the Scourge. Dr. Park solo walked through the massive research facility's corridors, marveling at technology that would have seemed like magic to her just months ago. But now, with full Council membership, humanity had access to the galaxy's greatest scientific achievements. The quantum computing arrays are still functional, reported Dr. An Seojin, the xenoarchaeologist who had joined Park's research team. And the historical databases are intact. We might finally get some answers about what we're really fighting. The facility orbited a white dwarf star, its massive ring structure stretching for hundreds of kilometers. It had been the Council's primary research center until the Scourge overran it 3 weeks ago. Getting it back had required a battle plan so unconventional that even human commanders initially rejected it as impossible. Pilot Oh Kyung-soo had led the assault, flying a modified Council fighter through the station's waste disposal system. While the main fleet provided a distraction outside, his approach violated every principle of space combat. Using garbage chutes as attack routes, hiding among floating debris, and firing weapons in directions that seemed completely random, but somehow always hit critical targets. The kid's got instincts you can't teach, Admiral Yu had said after the battle. He flies like the universe is trying to kill him and he's just too stubborn to die. Now, as teams of human and alien scientists worked side by side in Kepler's laboratories, the fruits of their unlikely partnership were beginning to show. Technician Nam Do-ho had become the galaxy's leading expert on hybrid technology, creating weapons and systems that combined human ingenuity with alien science. Look at this, he said excitedly, showing Park his latest creation. It looked like a Council energy rifle that someone had attacked with a toolbox. Cables and mechanical components were jury-rigged onto its sleek surface. I call it the Chaos Gun. That's a terrible name, Park said. What does it do? Watch. Nam pointed the weapon at a test target and fired. Instead of the expected energy beam, the gun produced a burst of superheated plasma, followed by a kinetic projectile, then a burst of electromagnetic interference. It fires 3 different types of attack in random sequence. The Scourge can adapt to one type of weapon, but they struggle when the same gun keeps changing what it does. Brilliant, said Dr. On, examining the weapon. It's like teaching a gun to be unpredictable. Park was studying data from their recent battles, looking for patterns in the Scourge's behavior. Your hybrid weapons are working, but I think we can do better. What if we made systems that adapt faster than the Scourge can counter-adapt? How? By using human intuition to guide alien technology. Instead of programming optimal responses, we program the systems to ask their human operators what feels right in each situation. Engineer Choi Bo-ram looked up from her workstation. You want to build weapons that work on hunches? I want to build weapons that work the way humans think. The Scourge understand logical decision trees and optimal tactical algorithms. They don't understand the little voice in a soldier's head that says this feels wrong or I have a bad feeling about this. The breakthrough came when Dr. An made a discovery in the ancient archives. Deep in the Kepler database, she found records of civilizations that had faced the Scourge before. Not just the recent victims, but species from millions of years ago. Every single previous civilization followed the same pattern, she explained to the assembled research team. They developed advanced technology, achieved spaceflight, built great empires, and then encountered the Scourge. They all tried to fight with superior weapons and tactics. They all failed. But some lasted longer than others, Park observed, studying the data. What made the difference? The ones who survived longest were the ones who maintained some element of chaos in their societies, species that encouraged individual creativity, that celebrated unusual thinking, that didn't optimize everything for maximum efficiency. Commander Kim Tae-ho, recently promoted to lead the Joint Human Council fleet operations, understood immediately. They kept some humanity in their civilizations. Exactly. The civilizations that became too logical, too predictable, too perfect, they fell fastest. The Scourge could analyze and counter them quickly. But species that maintained some level of controlled chaos took longer to defeat. General Bae Yoonji had arrived from Earth the previous week with massive reinforcements. Not just ships, but millions of human volunteers who had trained in the new hybrid warfare techniques. She studied the historical data with the eye of a career military officer. This isn't just about tactics, she realized. It's about philosophy. The Scourge was designed to eliminate civilizations that had lost their creative spark. It's not trying to destroy advanced technology. It's trying to destroy the mentality that creates stagnant, predictable societies. The implications were staggering. The war wasn't just about survival. It was about what kind of civilization would emerge victorious. A society that valued efficiency and optimization above all else would always be vulnerable to the Scourge. But a civilization that maintained some level of creative chaos, that celebrated the unpredictable and the unconventional, might be able to resist. We need to share this with every species in the galaxy, Park said. Not just the tactical innovations, but the philosophical ones. They need to learn to think like humans. That's going to be harder than teaching them to fight like us, Kim warned. Some of these species have spent millennia perfecting logical, ordered societies. Asking them to embrace chaos goes against everything they believe. The solution came from an unexpected source. Pilot Oh Kyung-soo, working with a team of council engineers, developed something called the Soul Protocol, a training program that taught alien crews to make decisions based on human-style intuition rather than pure logic. It's not about being random, he explained, to a group of crystalline officers who were struggling with the concept. It's about trusting your instincts when the logical choice doesn't feel right. But instincts are evolutionary artifacts, one of them replied, his voice ringing like wind chimes. They're often wrong, yeah, sometimes they are. But they're wrong in ways the Scourge can't predict. And when they're right for reasons that pure logic can't explain. The first mixed-species crew to fully embrace the Soul Protocol was aboard the Council vessel Infinite Harmony. Their captain, a methane-breathing entity called Jaxlar, had initially been skeptical of human methods. But after 3 successful engagements using intuition-based tactics, he had become one of their strongest advocates. Today we encountered a Scourge patrol fleet, he reported after their latest mission. My tactical computer recommended a flanking maneuver with optimal spacing and timing. But my human advisor, Specialist Lee Min-ho, said it felt like a trap. We instead performed what he called a chaos charge, every ship attacking from a different angle with different weapons. The enemy was completely unprepared. Similar reports came in from across the battlefront. Ships using hybrid human-alien tactics were achieving victory rates far higher than traditional Council forces. More importantly, they were forcing the Scourge to expend enormous computational resources trying to analyze and counter approaches that defied logical explanation. But the enemy was learning too. The Scourge collective mind had begun to focus specifically on human tactics, designating humanity as a priority threat, despite their technological limitations. This created an opening that General Bay was quick to exploit. "Let them focus on us," she told her officers. "While the Scourge is trying to understand human unpredictability, the other species can hit them with conventional attacks that suddenly become effective again." The strategy worked brilliantly. As the Scourge devoted more and more processing power to analyzing human behavior patterns, they became vulnerable to simultaneous attacks by Council forces using standard tactics. It was like a master chess player being distracted by someone flipping cards randomly at a nearby table. Dr. Park made the final breakthrough while studying captured Scourge technology. The machines weren't just artificial intelligence. They were the ultimate expression of a civilization that had optimized everything, removed all inefficiency, eliminated every element of chaos from their existence. They destroyed themselves, she realized with horror. The civilization that created the Scourge didn't fall to their machines. They became their machines. They optimized away everything that made them creative, everything that made them adaptable. The Scourge isn't their creation, it's what they turned into. And now they're testing other civilizations to see if they'll make the same mistake. On added. Species that become too dependent on pure logic, that eliminate all elements of controlled chaos from their cultures, fail the test and get destroyed. But species that maintain their creativity, their unpredictability, their humanity. Park smiled for the first time in weeks. They get to inherit the galaxy the war was far from over. The Scourge still controlled dozens of star systems, and their adaptive algorithms were getting better at predicting human behavior. But for the first time since the crisis began, the defenders had a clear understanding of what they were fighting for. It wasn't just about defeating an enemy. It was about proving that Civiliza. The discovery came at the worst possible moment. Dr. Park Sola stared at the data scrolling across her screen in Kepler Station's main laboratory, her hands shaking with excitement and terror. After months of analyzing captured Scourge technology, she had finally found it, the hidden weakness built into their core programming. General Bay. "You need to see this immediately," she called across the bustling research center. General Bei Yunji approached, still wearing her battle-stained uniform from the latest engagement. Earth's supreme military commander had arrived 2 weeks ago with the largest human fleet ever assembled, 200 ships carrying 3 million volunteers from every city on Earth. Seoul had contributed tactical analysts, Busan sent naval specialists, and smaller cities had provided everything from combat engineers to psychological warfare experts. "What did you find, Doctor?" Park pointed to the complex code structures displayed on her screen. "It's hidden deep in their base programming, almost invisible unless you know what to look for. The civilization that created the Scourge built in a failsafe, a way to shut them down if they ever went too far." "A kill switch?" "More than that. It's a test protocol. The Scourge aren't just trying to destroy advanced civilizations, they're evaluating them. If a species proves they can advance technologically while maintaining their creative spark, the machines are programmed to stand down." General Bay studied the data with the intensity of someone who had spent a lifetime making life or death decisions. "How do we trigger this protocol?" "That's the problem. It requires proof that a civilization has achieved something the Scourge creators thought was impossible, technological advancement without loss of adaptability. And the proof has to come from the galactic core, from something called the Ancient Guardian." Scientist Lim Woo-jin looked up from his workstation, where he had been analyzing energy readings from the galaxy's center. "General, I've been tracking unusual signatures from that region. Massive structures that have been dormant for millions of years are showing signs of activation. The Ancient Guardian," Dr. An Seo-jin called from her archaeological research station. "I found references to it in the oldest Council archives. It's a defense platform built by the same civilization that created the Scourge. but it was designed to test their enemies rather than their own people. The tactical situation was becoming desperate. Despite their recent victories, the Scourge controlled over 60 star systems and showed no signs of slowing their advance. Worse, they were beginning to adapt to human-style tactics, their algorithms slowly learning to predict apparent randomness. Admiral Eugene's voice crackled through the communication system from the front lines. "General, we've got problems out here. The machines are starting to counter our chaos tactics. They're running probability calculations on our random choices and finding patterns we didn't know we had." "How long before they fully adapt?" General Bay asked. "Maybe 2 weeks. Maybe less. After that, our advantage disappears." The race was on. While the Scourge worked to decode human unpredictability, Earth's best minds worked to unlock the secrets of the ancient Guardian. The massive structure, located at the galaxy's exact center, was larger than a star system and had been dormant for over 3 million years. Dr. An led the archaeological mission to activate it, but the Guardian required something the team hadn't expected: constant tactical input from creative minds to function effectively. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a test of whether the current galactic civilization could provide the kind of adaptive thinking its creators valued. "It's like a massive brain that needs to be taught how to think," An explained during a briefing. "The platform has incredible power, but it requires beings who can make intuitive leaps, who can see solutions that pure logic would miss." "Humans," General Bay said simply. "Not just humans anymore. The Soul Protocol training has taught other species to think more creatively, but we'll need thousands of minds working together, all contributing their unique perspectives to guide the Guardian." The largest space battle in galactic history was already building around the Centauri cluster, where the Scourge had concentrated their main fleet for a final push toward the galaxy's core. Admiral Yu coordinated the defense with representatives from 30 different species, their combined fleets moving in patterns that looked chaotic, but somehow achieved perfect coordination. "All ships, implement Plan Chaos 7, she broadcast. "Remember, trust your instincts, not your computers. If it feels right, do it. If it feels wrong, do something else." The battle was unlike anything in military history. Ships from dozens of worlds fought under human tactical doctrine, their movements guided by intuition rather than calculated precision. Council vessels used their superior speed to dart through enemy formations like excited children, while human ships employed ramming tactics that violated every principle of sensible warfare. But it was working. The Scourge fleet, despite its numerical superiority, struggled to counter an enemy that changed tactics based on battlefield hunches rather than logical analysis. Captain Oh Kyung-soo, now leading an entire squadron of hybrid human-alien fighters, demonstrated the new approach perfectly. His pilots flew through asteroid fields and debris clouds, using obstacles as weapons and turning apparent disadvantages into tactical advantages. When a Scourge vessel tried to trap his squadron in a gravity well, Oh ordered his pilots to fly directly into it, using the gravitational pull to slingshot around an attack from an impossible angle. "Control, this is Ghost Squadron," he reported. "We're being chased by 6 enemy fighters through the Centauri asteroid belt. Requesting permission to do something really stupid." "Define really stupid," Admiral Yu replied. "We're going to fly through the belt backwards, using our rear guns to take shots while the asteroids provide cover. That's actually brilliant." Permission granted, the maneuver worked perfectly. The Scourge fighters, programmed to expect logical flight patterns, couldn't adapt quickly enough to pilots who were literally flying backwards through a minefield while shooting over their shoulders. Meanwhile, at the galactic core, Dr. An's team was making progress with the ancient Guardian. The massive structure had awakened fully, its crystalline surfaces pulsing with energy that bent space and time. But operating it required something unprecedented: a neural link connecting thousands of creative minds across dozens of species. "The Guardian is responding," reported technician Nam Do-ho from the primary interface console. "But it needs constant input. Every tactical decision, every strategic choice has to be made by beings capable of intuitive thinking." "How many minds do we need?" General Bay asked. "All of them. Every ship captain, every squad leader, every person with the authority to make battlefield decisions. They all need to be connected to the Guardian network." It was an impossible request that somehow became possible through human ingenuity and alien technology. Using a combination of Council quantum communication systems and human neural interface techniques, they created a network that linked creative minds across the galaxy. Pilots in combat, engineers solving problems, even artists and musicians on distant worlds all contributed their unique perspectives to guide the Guardian. The results were immediate and stunning. The ancient Guardian didn't just fire weapons. It rewrote reality in small but crucial ways. Scourge missiles found themselves flying through empty space where targets had been moments before. Enemy ships discovered that their perfect calculations were suddenly wrong as fundamental constants shifted by tiny amounts. The machine's predictive algorithms collapsed as the universe itself became slightly less predictable. It's not destroying the Scourge, Dr. Park realized as she monitored the Guardian's operations. It's changing the rules of engagement, making reality more favorable to creative thinking and less favorable to pure logic. But the Scourge weren't passive victims. The machines recognized the Guardian as their ultimate test and concentrated every available unit for an assault on the galactic core. Millions of mechanical vessels converged on the ancient structure, their combined firepower enough to shatter planets. General Bay coordinated the defense from her command ship, the newly launched Sol Victory. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of every friendly ship, every enemy unit, every strategic asset in a battle that spanned multiple star systems. All human commanders, "This is it," she broadcast. "Everything we've learned, everything we've taught the other species, it all comes down to the next few hours. The Guardian is powerful, but it can only work if we keep feeding it creative solutions. Don't think about optimal tactics. Think about impossible victories." The battle raged for 18 hours. Ships were destroyed and replaced by reserve fleets that appeared from hidden staging areas. Entire squadrons sacrificed themselves to buy time for evacuation ships to escape. Heroes emerged and died and were remembered in the span of minutes. Through it all, the Guardian continued its work, guided by the combined creativity of 1,000 species. Reality became increasingly hostile to pure logic, and increasingly favorable to inspired improvisation. Scourge vessels found their weapons misfiring, their navigation systems confused by space that didn't behave according to predictable mathematics. General, called Communications Officer Kim Min-seo from her station. 6 months after the Great Victory, President Han Mi-young stood at the observation deck of New Nexus Station, watching construction crews from dozens of worlds working together to rebuild galactic civilization. The massive space station was rising from the wreckage of the old Nexus Prime. But this time it was being built with a different philosophy, one that celebrated diversity and creativity rather than efficiency and uniformity. Captain Lee Hyun, now Supreme Commander of the United Galactic Command, joined her at the viewport. His simple human uniform looked plain next to the elaborate costumes worn by other species leaders, but no one questioned his authority anymore. The man who had once been dismissed as a primitive observer was now the most respected figure in galactic politics. "The final reports are in," he told President Han. "Reconstruction is ahead of schedule on all fronts. The hybrid technology programs are working better than anyone expected. Below them, human engineers worked alongside crystalline architects and energy beings, creating structures that combine the best of every civilization's knowledge. But the real innovation wasn't in the technology. It was in the approach. Instead of seeking the single most efficient solution to each problem, the mixed teams generated dozens of different approaches and chose the ones that felt right for each specific situation. Dr. Park, Sola had established the new Galactic Research Institute on the site of the old Kepler station. Her mandate was simple but revolutionary: study the universe with curiosity rather than just seeking to control it. The Institute's first major discovery had come from studying quantum mechanics through the lens of artistic expression, leading to breakthroughs that pure mathematical analysis had missed. "Commander," called Dr. An Seo-jin over the communication system, "we've received another message from the Creator." The Creator was the ancient intelligence that had designed the Scourge test millions of years ago. It had revealed itself fully only once during the final moments of the Guardian activation, but it continued to communicate through quantum resonance patterns that defied conventional physics. Lee activated the nearest communication console. The Creator's voice was like listening to wind through mountain passes, ancient and patient. "The reconstruction proceeds well. Your species have shown remarkable wisdom in their choices. We learned from the test, Lee replied. Power without wisdom is destruction. Technology without creativity is stagnation. Indeed. But now comes the greater test, maintaining this wisdom as your civilizations grow stronger. The Scourge was not the only challenge your galaxy will face. President Han leaned forward. What do you mean? The universe is vast and filled with dangers. Some threats require advanced technology to overcome. Others can only be defeated through the kind of creative thinking you have demonstrated. Your galaxy must be ready for both. It was a sobering reminder that their recent victory was just the beginning. The threat from the Scourge had forced different species to work together, to learn from each other's strengths. But maintaining that cooperation during peacetime would be even more challenging. Admiral Yu Jin'e had been working on exactly this problem. She now commanded the Galactic Defense Force, a truly integrated military where human intuition guided alien technology and alien wisdom tempered human aggression. Her latest report showed remarkable progress. We've established joint training facilities in every sector, she reported during the weekly command briefing. Human officers are teaching creative problem-solving to alien crews, while alien instructors are showing our people how to use advanced technology responsibly. The results exceed all projections. General Bei Yunji added her perspective from the civilian reconstruction efforts. It's not just the military integration that's working. We're seeing the same success in engineering, medicine, agriculture, even art and entertainment. When different ways of thinking combine, they create solutions none of us could have achieved alone. The transformation was visible everywhere. On worlds that had been devastated by the Scourge, new cities rose that looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Buildings that grew like living things, transportation systems that flowed like water, energy networks that adapted to changing needs like neural pathways. Each project was unique, shaped by the combined creativity of its builders rather than imposed by universal standards. But the most important changes were harder to see. Species that had spent millennia in isolation were learning to appreciate different perspectives. The crystalline beings were discovering the value of emotional decision-making. The energy creatures were exploring the benefits of physical form. Humanity was learning that their chaotic approach to problems worked even better when guided by alien wisdom. The Soul Protocol has evolved, reported Captain Oh Kyung-soo, now head of the Galactic Training Academy. We're not just teaching aliens to think like humans anymore. We're teaching everyone to think like themselves, but better, more creatively, more adaptively, more cooperatively. The breakthrough that made this possible had come from technician Nam Do-ho, who was now the galaxy's leading expert on consciousness technology integration. His latest invention was elegant in its simplicity. Devices that enhanced creativity rather than replacing it with automation. Instead of making machines that think for us, he explained to a group of visiting dignitaries, we make machines that help us think better. They amplify intuition instead of overriding it, enhance creativity instead of standardizing it. Dr. Park had been working on the theoretical implications of this approach. Her research suggested that civilizations could advance indefinitely, as long as they maintained the balance between technology and creativity, between efficiency and adaptability, between logic and intuition. The species that failed the Scourge test weren't less intelligent than us, she had concluded in her landmark paper. They were more intelligent in narrow ways, but less wise in broad ones. They optimized their thinking until they could no longer think outside their optimizations. The lesson was being applied everywhere. New technologies were deliberately designed with built-in inefficiencies that forced users to make creative choices. Artificial intelligence systems were programmed to ask questions rather than provide answers. Even the simplest tools included elements of unpredictability that required human judgment to use effectively. But the greatest test of their new philosophy came when the first new external threat appeared. Long-range sensors detected massive objects approaching from outside the galaxy. Not hostile machines like the Scourge, but something else entirely. Something that had been observing the test from a distance and now wanted to make contact. First contact with a truly alien intelligence. President Han mused as they prepared for the encounter. How do we handle something that might be completely beyond our understanding? The answer came from the most unlikely source. Pilot Lee Min-ho, Oh Kyung-soo's younger brother, was now leading experimental flights to the galaxy's edge. His report was characteristically simple and direct. "They're trying to communicate through patterns that look like music," he transmitted from his scout ship. "Beautiful, complex melodies that seem to carry information, but our computers can't decode them." "Can you understand them?" Commander Lee asked. "Not with my head. But somehow, yes, it's like they're speaking directly to something deeper than logic. I think they want to know if we're worth talking to." The solution was pure human instinct guided by alien technology. Instead of trying to decode the alien music mathematically, they responded with creative expressions of their own: art, poetry, music, and stories that showcase the diversity and creativity of galactic civilization. The response was immediate and joyful. The aliens, who turned out to be beings of pure artistic expression from another dimension, welcomed the galaxy into a broader community of creative intelligences. They brought new perspectives on reality, new ways of understanding existence that complemented rather than replaced existing knowledge. "We are not the first to pass the test," the dimensional beings explained through their musical language, "but you are the first to pass it so completely, maintaining both technological advancement and creative diversity. Most civilizations achieve one or the other, but not both." As the celebrations continued across the galaxy, Commander Lee found himself back where the journey had started, in a council chamber addressing representatives from hundreds of worlds. But this time the chamber was designed differently. Instead of rigid hierarchies and formal protocols, beings mingled freely, sharing ideas and perspectives in an ongoing creative chaos that somehow produced better decisions than traditional committee structures. 6 months ago, Earth was dismissed as powerless, he addressed the assembly. "We were called primitive, backward, irrelevant. Today we stand together as equals in a galactic community that values every unique perspective, every creative contribution, every different way of understanding reality." The applause that followed wasn't the polite acknowledgement of political necessity. It was genuine celebration of a shared victory over forces that would have destroyed them all. High Counselor Zafira, whose energy form now displayed patterns influenced by human art forms, spoke for many when she said, "We thought power came from having the best technology, the most advanced weapons, the most efficient systems.